once again to the city for allowing us to do a drive here in the city. And in addition, I was a little bit late to Father Joe's comments about our city because I got 2 teenage boys at home that demanded to eat before I came to this meeting, and you know how that is. We are doing this year 7 Eagle projects out of our troop. Out of those 7, 4 are here in Allen Park. Out of those 4, maybe 5, I think 5, I'll take that back, 5 are here in Allen Park. No money had to be funded through the city in lieu of thankfully our troop was able to help out and get all this done. And every one of them will benefit the city. So just, if I'm the last person, let's end it on a positive note for our city. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Oh, God, how many times? Mr. Menson?
Wait a minute, I'm not done yet.
Well, what,
I get 4 minutes, and I took them 1 minute at a time.
Mr. Menson, I'm going to tell you what it says over there on the rules, all right?
All right, go ahead.
You step away from the microphone, you yield any on time.
All right, I
that
didn't
you
know
had,
that, so
okay?
then I'll.
Thank you.
That's the rules. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Ms. Parker, Council. My name is Mike Boyer. I don't live in the city of Allen Park. I actually live in the city of Gibraltar, and I follow your news quite a bit through the News Herald. And in some cases, it makes a lot of sense. In some cases, it's less than that. But the reason I'm coming to you today is I was also, about 2 weeks ago, I had heart surgery. And really brings you home. And I've never met Mr. DiGiulio. At least I don't think I have. However, I read an article that was placed in the News Herald, and it was something to do with ethics and ethics committees and all of that. And there's a picture of Mr. DiGiulio. Looks like he's sitting outside a principal's office waiting for this determination of what's going to happen to him. Well, long story short, I would respectfully ask that perhaps as a council, as peers of Mr. DiGiulio, that someone should contact the News Herald, or maybe specifically to Mr. Herndon, and ask for an apology. Because one of the most important things that I've ever learned was impressions. How I want to perceive myself, how you would want to perceive as a council, as a government. People are going through a lot of trouble right now, and I really feel bad for you. But that was completely unfair and uncalled for. And I just wanted to take my time tonight to suggest to you, to folks, to take a look at that, please. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
Walter Danik, Bel Air Avenue, Allen Park. I just wanted to come up and congratulate all the graduating seniors of the high schools of Allen Park. I would also like to thank the News Herald for putting the top 10s of the graduating seniors of all the downriver communities. And since my stepdaughter tied for 9th at Cabrini High School in Allen Park, I would like to say that I looked at the scores from Allen Park High School and Cabrini compared to some other cities around here. Allen Park looks pretty darn good. And that's our future. That's it. Thank you.
See no one else coming forward, so I will go to council comments, and we'll start tonight with Mr. Keenan.
Go first. Well, I don't have a lot to say. I've already said my piece for the most part, but I just wanted to go back to, as somebody brought up, Father Joe came up here, and I've never met the man, but he came up here this morning or this evening and talked about us moving the city forward and uniting, and really, I thought what he said was very touching. It was a little moving to me, because I sit up here and you know, we hear a lot of the negativity. And I appreciate what he's doing. And I thought it was a good note to start on, you know, early in the meeting and to hear that. But then to hear that we're going to come every meeting and hear about corruption, and we're going to hear about this, and we're going to put signs on our lawn, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that. Totally 180-degree contrary to what the man just came up and said about trying to unite the city. And that's just a shame. I think, I personally, Bob Keenan, has faith in you folks to see through the nonsense, all right? I'm big enough. I made a mistake 2 weeks ago, and I said something that was wrong and made Mr. Diebolt look like he was wrong, and I'm man enough to stand up here today and apologize and say I was wrong. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I make them daily. And I'm going to come when I make them, and you bring them to me and you show me that I'm wrong, I'm going to be man enough to sit up here and apologize for them. I'm not going to harbor ill feelings and ill will towards anybody. This isn't personal for me. This isn't, you know, I'm not a city employee. I mean, I look at some of the cuts that are being proposed. Quite frankly, I'll be honest with you. I think some are too deep. I mean, I've said up here before, I'm sure that some of my colleagues will say that they're not deep enough, all right? I've said that we cannot fix the city of Allen Park on the backs of the police and fire department. Quite frankly, I know I'm speaking out of turn because you guys haven't even seen some of the cuts that are being proposed, but you will in time. But, you know, it is what it is. It's not personal to me. I think we're going to be a good city moving forward. I mean, I think it's a shame that we lost 4 officers, but you know what? I've got a friend over in Melvindale, Orlando Hinojosa, that's a police officer that hired in Detroit at about $25,000, worked over there for a few years, had the opportunity to come over to Melvindale, and he's had a career in Melvindale now. He's very involved in the community, helping out with the kids, doing a lot of great things. Orlando lives here in the city of Allen Park, and I shouldn't probably be talking about him without his permission, but we're going to get good people to replace those 4 people, I hope. If this millage passes and we're able to get our staffing, as Ms. Parker said, she wants to keep it at 35. I'm assuming since 4 people are leaving, we're down to 31. There'll be an opportunity. But we're going to get good people to replace them. You know, I don't, you know, people are jumping ship and leaving and all that. We can't control that. But at the end of the day, we need to have at least 35 police officers on the road. We need to have, you know, ambulances that are coming to our, you know, in a timely fashion, whoever that is, you know. I can't tell you how to vote on the millage. It's not legal, it's not moral, I wouldn't do it. But for me, you know, for the small dollars that we're talking about, for my livelihood, for the livelihood of my kids, my grandkids, my aunts, my uncles, everybody that lives here in the city of Allen Park, you know, like I said, I've said before, and I'm not ashamed of it, but, you know, I pay more for my phone than we want to pay for police and fire. I mean, to me, that's ridiculous. You know, my cell phone bill's $197 a month, you know, and I mean, I don't want to pay a quarter of that for police services. It boggles my mind. But you're going to have agendas. But again, I just want to end on the note that, you know, I trust you guys that are here week in and week out, that you're out there talking in the communities to people. You're not going to be buffaloed by nonsense. You know what's right, you know what's wrong. We can disagree, and you know what? Mr. Diebolt and I disagree on a lot of things. I have the utmost respect for him. It's not personal. We can disagree, and at the end of the day, I still think he's a great guy. I appreciate all the effort he puts into being diligent, and he can come up here and talk about the 10-year millage, and that's his opinion. You know, Ms. Parker said that the state doesn't recognize a 2-year millage. In order to have a deficit elimination plan, it has to be longer. That's the rules. We don't make them, but we have to live by them. We disagree on that, but that doesn't make me feel any less about anybody. And I'm not up here personally attacking anybody, and I welcome you to personally attack me. That was part of the job when I signed up for it. I don't like it, but I understand it. So thank you and good night.
Mr. Cisco.
Seems like it's been a really long night for some reason. You know, back in November of 2011, this council, this mayor got elected. And, you know, I did a lot of going on the streets and handing out literature and talking to residents street by street, house by house. I did a lot of that. And a lot of these issues that are coming today are the same issues when we got elected. The tree issue. I can't even tell you how many people complained about the tree issue when I was running for office. It's not changed for a lot of reasons. There was a rat problem before we got elected. There's going to be a rat problem. I don't know how we attack that problem. It's beyond my capabilities at this point. You talk about getting rat poison, somebody says, nope, can't do rat poison. Gonna hurt the dogs, gonna hurt this, gonna hurt that. Well, how do you get rid of the rats? You catch them? Mr. Turner, can you catch rats? Very, very difficult. And there's probably not a street in this city that doesn't have rats. It's a dirty little secret that we don't talk about.
I didn't know that. I really didn't know that.
But
Ma'am.
it's a dirty little secret that we don't talk about. So it's a problem. I know when I ran, and I might include Mr. Hayes in this, because I think we kind of ran on some of the same issues, is that there's a culture problem in the city of getting things done. And I believe that we were elected to try to change that culture. And it's not happening. It's not happening overnight. It is happening, little baby steps, but it is happening. Okay? And if you get on this side, and if from being on that side, then coming over to this side, it's very difficult to move policy, to get things to move in a certain direction. It takes a lot of effort. And it takes effort, not just from us, but from the people of Allen Park, from the citizens, to help in that. Coming up and saying certain things about you have a problem, I think that's a good thing. People need to know about those things. They need to be corrected. They really do. But we do have a problem. We have a problem. We're short-staffed. We're going from little project to little project. You know, it's like the little boy that put his finger in the dike in the dam to stop the water, and all of a sudden he didn't have enough fingers left. And that's kind of where we're at. So I have a lot of things. Father Joe coming up here today and wanting to do on July 18th a unity march. I just think that's brilliant. I really think that this city really does need to come together and understand the problems instead of trying to blame this person, that person, blame the police department, blame the fire department, blame the people who are getting pensions, blame everybody. You got to look in the mirror and blame yourself as citizens for letting a lot of stuff go this long. And Ms. Peters came up here, a retiree, and she talked about the people that aren't getting pensions, that are down on the list, that don't get a lot every year. When I was running, I did a little survey on the pensions, and I believe, and I haven't looked at it lately, but the top 30% pensioners in this city get 60% of the pension money, which leaves 40% for the rest of the 70%. 40% of the money is left for the 70%. So there are people down that aren't getting a lot of money. And it's just that top. And that's only happened in the last, I want to say 8 years or so, when the contracts got out of whack. And those people that come up here and say, you know, I'm not part of that. That lady's not part of the problem, is she? She deserves a pension. She worked. You know, so how do we fix it? We keep throwing blame around at everybody. I think this Unity March on July 18th, I'd like to see people come out and march and be unified in some respect. I think it's a brilliant idea, and I hope people come out to see it. Thank you for listening to me.
Mr. DiGiulio.
Thank you, Mayor. Maureen, did we have a wedding on Belmont Street recently?
Yes, we did.
Oh, good. So congratulations to your daughter, Megan, and her husband, Fred. I see, I noticed some, it's my street, so I did notice stuff going on there. So now I understand why I'm in the poverty level myself. 32 years of Great Lakes Steel, $1,267 a month. A far cry from even some of the police and fire pensions 15, 20 years ago. If you stop by the barber shop, I'll show you what they get. So it's a far cry from what the steel workers got all these years. Anyway, what really gets me is when we put a millage out and it fails, we come back in 6 months. But if we put a millage out and it passes, we don't come back in 6 months and ask the people, do you still like the millage? Do you like what we did 6 months ago? Let's vote again. So just think about it. I mean, 10 years is a long time. If you feel we should pass it, let's pass it and we'll all pay our share. If you feel we shouldn't, as 3 times now the millages have failed, then we'll see what happens there. Good night.
Ms. Gavarecki.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm also very glad Father Joe came up here this evening and spoke. It's just too bad that the evening went with comments going the opposite direction, so I'm a little disheartened about that. We have to move forward. We have to somehow heal. This walk is great, but I also think that some of, we have rules of decorum going for members of the audience. We also need, Mayor, please get your gavel out. I think there's too much back and forth going on between the residents when they're up here asking their questions and us trying to comment. That should be saved for council comments. There's no way that some of the stuff that went on this evening should have even been allowed to have gone on. It should have been gavelled down and move on. On a brighter note, I'm just sorry. This just went on too long tonight. I appreciate your comments, but I just think our replies back to you at that particular time are just not necessary unless you're asking for it. And we could have been moved on and talked more positively tonight. I don't want to steal Ms. Parker's thunder here, but she is having coffee times with the emergency manager. One day is this week, June 13th, at 11 o'clock at the Palouse Center there. So the issues to be discussed is the police and fire millage. And I also want to remind everybody that we're having a citywide garage sale, June 28th, 29th, and 30th. Registration is at the community center if you're interested in participating. And please, I hope to see everybody out at this march. I think it's a great thing, and I look forward to it, moving the city forward. Thank you.
Mr. Hayes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me say that as Father Malia is my pastor, and when he brought this up at Mass a few weeks ago, he first mentioned it, and that's when Wayne heard. I see Brian there sometimes, and I sit across, I did up until recently, from Mrs. Matakis, right across the aisle, until Father Joe admonished all of us that some of you people have been sitting in the same pews for years. Why don't you move around a little bit and meet somebody? So and I think Mrs. Matakis too, for that matter, we've chosen to move around. Like I was on this side and I was talking at the beginning of our Mass, they always say, greet your neighbor, say hello. And I said, I'm just down here on orders of the pastor, you know. And these people started kind of chuckling. But he's a great guy. He's a good leader. I mean, Cabrini is a huge parish. They just completed a marvelous festival this weekend that was, you know, fantastic by anybody's account, and I think they raised a good deal of money, which helps support the schools and such. So I will be there because he's my boss. In my faith tradition, he's the guy in charge, so I will go there because that's orders of the boss man, you know. On a couple other short items, I just wanted to make mention, and Wayne Albright and I will probably never rent a cottage together or spend a vacation in Mexico together, but I do respect Wayne. I like Wayne. But I guess what I'm saying, Wayne, I appreciate what you said, and I appreciate the way you said it. My point is, and I think it's lost on a lot of the people in city government, because all I'm saying is we try another way. We try part-time police. We try additional numbers of police. Eliminate overtime entirely. And I understand the logic that, hey, if we do it with overtime, we bring in revenue. But just think how much more revenue would be if you could accomplish that with straight time, either through part-timers or through some other mechanism. So there's a philosophical difference that we have that we may never reconcile. And that's all right, you know, because That's your experience, and I have my experience. When I was in the nursing home business, a very labor-intensive business, not high-priced labor, but very, very labor-intensive. We used to have our managers call us from the home office every morning and say, I want to know your hours of labor per patient. And we had these PPDs, and this lady here used to work for me. She was a nurse and over in Taylor, and we had to have a finite number of people. If we were over by an inkling, we were told, why? Why did that guy have to come in? Send somebody home early. And we worked our darndest to try to avoid even the half-hour overtime. And the only people that really violated were the nurses, because I had to chart, I had to finish my charting, and they'd always end up staying an hour afterwards or something like that. But generally speaking, that's my experience background. And finally, with respect to the ordinance enforcement, which we've talked about quite a great deal, I think, as I said earlier, I think the problem is that we have the ordinances, we have the ordinance officers, we've had them, we lost them, now we have them, but we're not consistent with how we enforce these things. We have all kinds, and Harry's brought up these temporary signs, these banners tied to the light posts. That's illegal as heck. It's totally, they've been up there for years. We bring it up, nothing happens. We have a guy, and I talked to Dan about it today, some guy who's doing scrap business out of his backyard over on Becker, and you've heard about it, we've talked about it. I sent 2 emails to the chief of police, never heard a response back from him. He doesn't like me, that's all right. I don't really here to make friends, but I would appreciate the respect of a return comment. The ladies emailing me 2 or 3 times a week saying they're doing it again. I called the police, they said, well, we don't have anybody to send out there, we're too busy, we only got 3 cars. They don't want to hear complaints. No matter what business you're in a restaurant, if you're in a nursing home, or if you're in a city government, nobody wants to hear your problems. So keep that to yourself and just say either we'll be right out or we'll call you later. But don't tell people, we're short of staff, because that's the most obnoxious thing anybody wants to hear. And I learned that years ago when I didn't have enough people to change the diapers of the elderly or feed the people, and I had to go out there and do it myself as the manager. I didn't whine and say, we don't have enough people, we're short-staffed. I just said, roll up your sleeves, boys and girls, and let's get this work done. And that's what you have to do sometimes. But I mean, here we got people that still don't have full-time jobs that I can tell, but they're here on the payroll, and someday they'll get a pension, but they're not working that hard. So I'm glad to know that some of them maybe are stepping up and they'll do something in the next period of time, but that's where I'm coming from, and that's my experience. That doesn't make me a better guy or Wayne a bad guy or anything like that. It's just we're different, we have different work experiences. Thank you.
Ms. Armstrong.
And on a positive note,
Please, Mr. Mensinger, quiet. Quiet.
He's the guy.
I've had experience with our new ordinance officers. They're 2 part-timers. And I must say that in the short time that they've been here, they have done quite a good job. These are all the citations that they have addressed. They have gone out to every one of these properties and addressed the noxious weeds and debris. And that's what they have been hired to do. And what's going to happen is if these people do not cut their lawns or take care of their properties, this money is going to be collected by the city of Allen Park in the winter tax bills. So this is a revenue generating program for us. This is something that's coming out of our police department, and it's a valuable job for these 2 men to have for the city of Allen Park. I had a complaint about the old Tim Tam apartment. I gave Ken, the ordinance officer, the complaint, and within a couple of days, they had that property cut. It's going to take them time to get our contractors out there, but believe me, they are working on it. So I think we just need to be patient. I know that we have a lot of complaints about trees, and we have a lot of complaints about abandoned homes, but these gentlemen are working right now on the weeds. Now, whether or not they're going to work on the other problems that we have in the city, I couldn't answer that. Perhaps our police chief could. But in the treasurer's office, I am taking those complaints and I am giving them to our ordinance officers. So if there is a home or a piece of property that isn't being cared for, please feel free to call, and I will get that information over to our ordinance officers. And I also would like to congratulate the 4 police officers who have moved on, Mr. Mathis, Mr. Faulkner, Mr. David, and Ms. Cronin. They had quite a few years with the city. They were all good officers, and I wish them well, as I'm sure many people in the city do. On that note, have a good evening and see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Mr. Mizzi.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to clarify earlier, Marcia, it wasn't what you were saying, it was just, I was very close to that situation. I had no part of it, but I was actually there when the guy admitted to making up that stuff about the snowmobiles. I had overheard and he didn't even know who I was.
Brooke,
And
please.
I'm just telling you what my problem was, okay? That's,
Mr.
I
Giulio.
know. Again, it's my time and I did cut on yours.
Mr. Giulio.
However, please understand that whatever other part, you may be right, I don't know, but I was just close to that snowmobile incident, and it never happened, okay? I'm just clarifying that part, so I apologize. Also, it's, and I did have a little bit of an outburst, and if anyone knows, I've been sitting here year after year just watching the environment get worse and worse and worse and worse. And to me, it's an understanding issue. We're not all understanding what's going on. As much as we like to think that I called the city, I have a problem, you literally only have 4 guys in your DPW, okay? You got 4 guys in your water department, 1,200 trees, do the math, okay? Do the math. Try to do it in 1 year. So it is getting harder, and why city employees are getting frustrated? Because I deal with it every day on the phone. Do you know how dumb I feel telling the same lady day in, day out, I'm sorry, you know I can't help you, I've tried, it's embarrassing for me as a person, as a human, as a citizen, as an employee. Okay, so I may take things you may hear of city employees getting upset. It's not that they're cutting benefits or taking away wages. Most of us accept that. It's the fact that it's not getting better. We're getting beat up and nothing's getting better, okay? I'm not gonna have an enormous pension. I probably won't even have one by the time I go. And I don't care, I accept that, I don't do it for that. But you guys have to understand our end too, we're trying. I mean, maybe not everyone could go at 110% 24/7, but it's just, we are trying, so just bear with us, okay? Because this hopefully will be over. But other than that, and I just want to remind people that for the August 6th election, we will all be voting at City Hall, okay? I will be putting down the breakdowns of where you're going to vote. If you're in Precinct 1, you'll go back into Precinct 1. I'll put the breakdown out as much as I can, but please remember, vote here, okay? With that, I'd like to thank everyone for their comments tonight. God bless you and good night.
I haven't forgotten tonight, Ms. Parker.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to comment on a couple of items basically stated by the treasurer as well as our city clerk. There is quite a bit taking place in the city at this point in time, and we do have the issue with the deficit. There is a shortage related to the number of employees that are in place with the city. And I think everyone basically have stated the same issue related to the city. Certainly, as we move forward, we're going to be looking at reorganizing, making other adjustments, but a lot of the problems did not occur within the last 6 months. It's been ongoing for a number of years, and it will take time to address issues, and we are working on that. And I, too, would like to encourage everyone to be patient and give us an opportunity to restructure. The other comment is in reference to the millage. There was some question about the financial and operating plan, and I'm certainly willing to meet with anyone that have questions about the plan and how it was built and what assumptions are in place. And I know, Mr. Diebold, you had some comments, and I would certainly welcome an opportunity to sit down with you and review it, because there are assumptions that may not be as clear just to look at the numbers. And then thirdly, just to also state that we do have informational meetings taking place. And as mentioned earlier tonight, the first meeting is June 13th at the Palouche Housing Center at 11 a.m. There's another meeting scheduled for Thursday, June 20th at 11 a.m. at the American Legion on Garfield. Another one is on Thursday, June 27th at 4 p.m. here at City Hall in the council chambers. And a fourth meeting is scheduled for July 2nd at 6 p.m. with the Kiwanis Club. Again, they're informational to discuss the police fire millage. Thank you.
I want to thank everyone for coming out tonight, and there was a lot of discussion about police officers' pay, those leaving, questions of behavior in that. And I thought important that the citizens realize that the police force that Allen Park employs, generally, we have higher standards than the Michigan Commission on Law Enforcement Standards. Law enforcement standards for the statewide are, person has to be 18 years old. You have to be 21 years old to be on our police force. You have to, under state law, have a high school diploma. Ours have to have associate degrees. In addition to that, we have 30% of our officers have bachelor's and 2 officers have master's degree. The felony conviction, no prior felony conviction. Allen Park looks at your misdemeanor record, and generally any kind of misdemeanors probably will disqualify you from employment on our force. Hearing, physical ability to do their jobs, MCOL and Allen Park requires that. In addition to the standards that MCOL has, we have written examinations of which they have to have a 70% passing rate. They have to be interviewed by an oral panel of officers. They have to take a physical exam. We have a licensed psychologist, which is not required by MCOLs, but to talk to all of the incoming officers to make certain they're free from mental or emotional instabilities that make them dangerous to performing their job and dangerous to the citizens, their fellow officers, and maybe even themselves. Their vision has to be good. They can't be colorblind. I found that out. I can't be a police officer, I guess. Their reading and writing, they have to take an exam. As I said, they have licensing examinations by the state. They have to be fingerprinted, and then they are checked with the federal fingerprint files to disclose any criminal record that might be anywhere in the United States. As I said, an oral interview, and of course they have to be drug testing. So it's a rather extensive amount of testing. It takes quite some time, and then there's almost a 6-month break-in period for any officer hired. So when we lose officers, if we're replacing officers, there is going to be a lag time before we have the officers in place that we need to do the job for our city. So you ought to realize that when you say we can cut benefits, we can cut salaries, and we're going to get all the same quality of people working for us, I question that. I've never seen that in my experience in multiple workplaces that I've been, and as I observe police forces around this state, those that seem to have the most problems also seem to have the least training standards. They have the least ongoing training standards, which is, I think, a problem for us too, because we have stopped training, other than the one standard that an officer must shoot at least once a year and qualify under certain state standards for that. So these things are not easily placed. I know Ms. Parker is considering what to do with the police department if the millage doesn't pass. It certainly will not be a pretty picture, and it certainly will not be a situation that Allen Park will have experienced in its past. So I hope all of you will take these things into consideration when August 6th and the election comes. I think with that, I can ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Mr. DiGiulio's moved. Do I have a second? Support by Mr. Hayes. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.